Hello and welcome back to the channel. There's a plugin that I've had on my master chain for about 2 years or so, and I've never actually made a video about it or talked about quite how important it is. I always talk about gain staging, limiting, compression, and all that really important stuff, but one of the key parts of my chain is the loudness meter I use and why I use it, so that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. We're going to be taking a close look at the Youlean Loudness Meter 2, which is a free, fully featured loudness meter, and also the Pro version, which just unlocks a few handy features that can make things a little bit quicker or more easy for you. This review is completely unsponsored. I'm not being paid to say any of this. I've been using the free version for about 1.5 years, and I recently upgraded to the Pro version. I do, however, personally know the developer. He's a very hardworking, very detailed man, and he's kindly given me an affiliate link. So if you try the free version for a while and you want to upgrade to support the developer and get a few more features, if you use the affiliate link in the description, I'll get a very small commission. So let's now take a look at this loudness meter, why I use it, why it's important, and how I use it. So let's start with the basics. Once you've downloaded it, you install it, and you can install a VST2 or 3 at 64 or 32 bits. You can also install an AAX plugin and a standalone plugin, so you should be able to use it in any DAW or actually as a standalone application on your computer. I load it in the last effects slot of my mastering chain, so I have the free one and the Pro version. On the surface of it, they're very, very similar. There's just a few extra things, such as some extra presets and some extra sort of customization options, which are not essential, but they can sometimes help depending on your work. So you can resize the plugin from the bottom left. You can see that the user interface is completely scalable and looks amazing. Up at the top left here, there's a view option. So you can turn on and off parts of it. So if you don't like the histogram view, you can remove that. And there's a few extra settings, including GUI scaling, text scaling, and also changing the frame rate or the sort of graphic refresh rate. I keep it on very high, but if your computer is struggling, you can just lower it. It makes it a little bit more choppy, but also saves you some extra CPU. I do, however, want to say that this plugin is not at all CPU intensive. I should also say this is just a loudness meter plugin. It won't affect your mix in any way. It doesn't affect your signal chain. It simply monitors your signal chain. One of the nice options in the Pro version is that you can change to this dark theme that makes the whole thing just a little bit easier to look at. I use this plugin in 3 ways. The first is as a real-time loudness analyzer. So if I just play audio with it turned on, it's starting to give me some data about the song. So if I take a closer look at this, it's giving me the short-term LUFS, the integrated LUFS in my sort of data panel here. I have my main meter, and I also have a histogram that's giving me some more information. I'll go into all of this in a lot more detail, don't worry, I'm glossing over it at the moment. The second way to use this plugin, which is only available in the Pro version, is to take a file either from your DAW or anywhere on your computer and simply drag and drop it onto the plugin, and it will analyze the entire song. And if I just scroll out in the histogram view, it's analyzed the entire song, and it gives me a lot of information about the loudness and all the important details and stats that I need. And the third way I use this plugin is not as a loudness meter, but as a dynamic range meter, which is this value here. And down here in the corner, I can change from loudness to dynamic range, which is displayed here. This is all going to look a little bit crazy, but hopefully it'll make sense by the end of this tutorial. The reason I use a professional loudness meter like this is because just using dB or dBRMS just doesn't cut it anymore. I don't know if you've experienced this where you've mastered a track and your RMS value seems good, but then you compare it to a professional release and your track is just lacking so much loudness and so much perceived loudness and energy. Using a loudness meter can help you get things into the right sort of ballpark. Mainly by using LUFS, LUFS. This is different from RMS because it applies a filter to the audio before it sort of processes it, which means that it's less sensitive to the low end and it's more sensitive to the high end, which is more like the way we actually perceive loudness as human beings. And as well as having 100% accurate information about the LUFS values, it also gives you information about the true peak value and the dynamic range, which are really crucial in making sure that you can actually get your song nice and loud, because if you just use RMS, sometimes you could have actually pushed a lot more loudness out of it and you could just get a better sounding mix and master overall. First thing I'm going to do is go down to the bottom left and just select a preset, and I'm going to select YouTube. So say I'm trying to master a song to upload it to YouTube to get the right kind of loudness out of it. I can see that this yellow marker on the histogram has just updated to -13 because that's the level YouTube is looking for as an integrated loudness level. I'm going to play some audio through it and start explaining what all of these terms and this data is. So at the left we have a main meter. This is handy if you want to turn off the histogram view and just see only these two. This main meter is giving me information about the short term and the momentary loudness, as well as my loudness range, which I'll explain what that is in a minute. This box here has all the values numerically, so you don't have to try and read it off a graph and look to the axis. So it's just telling me, okay, that's my short-term loudness, that's my integrated loudness. And then over at this side, I have a histogram, which is a graphical representation of loudness over time. So at the bottom, I have my time. Vertically, I have the loudness in LUFS. And right now what I'm looking at is the short-term loudness. I can turn it on and off down here. I can look at the momentary loudness, which you can see is more, which fluctuates more. And then I have my true peaks, which are highlighted as these little reds if they get above a certain threshold that I've set. I can scroll in and out in this graph just using the scroll wheel of my mouse to change the amount of time that I see. I can also move it up and down so that I can see different data, and I can move it left to right to see it in real time or to let it scroll along like this. I can also turn off the short term and the momentary, which will just display the true peaks, which I can see are below 0 here. And you can see there's times when it jumps up and down. If I go down to the bottom again, there's a few different display modes. So right now it's elapsed, but if I change it to time code, it's actually going to sync up with where I am in my DAW. So if I'm at 1:30 and press play, this says 1:30 as well. And that way, if I have a true peak that's too loud, I can identify the exact second in my actual mix when it peaked louder, which is particularly helpful. If you're using the free version, it's good to play it through for a large portion of your song and then look at the data afterwards. But I'm just going to drag and drop my song into here so that I can analyze the entire thing. So let's take a look at the data it's giving me and why any of this is important at all. So the integrated LUFS is important. This averages the loudness over the entire track, and it lets me know if I'm in the right sort of area. So I can see that at times I was below -13, at times I was above. But overall, based on this, YouTube will turn my audio down just a little bit. So I'm definitely up to the right threshold that I'm not missing out on any loudness, but I could still push it a bit further. The loudness range is letting me know the difference between the louder parts of my song and the quieter parts. So this is my verse here, and this was my chorus, and there's quite a big difference in loudness, almost 8 loudness units. So that might indicate that my song is overall a little bit too dynamic. So the macro dynamics between my verse and my chorus might be a little bit much, which means that right now I'm going to have a lot of impact in that chorus, but who knows, it might even be too much. So if you analyze some professional songs, you can see what their loudness range between their choruses and verses are in that particular genre. Because sometimes I'll be mixing or mastering in a genre that I'm not familiar with. I don't mix a lot of rock. So if I pull in some references, I can see what their loudness between the verses and the choruses. And when a tool like this makes it nice and simple for me to see that, it just makes my life a lot easier. I'm just going to skip over a few here because they make more sense with a different graph. And I'm going to go to the true peak maximum. This is the true maximum value that my audio gets to. And right now it says it's about -1.0 dB. And if I turn on true peaks at the bottom here, I can see the points where it got to that value, -1. And this is because I've set a threshold, or this preset has a threshold set, whereby if the true peak crosses this value, it's going to give me a little alert on the graph. When the true peak crosses the threshold that a certain streaming site has allowed, it means that when that song is transcoded into a different format, such as MP3, there's going to be an encoding error. It might be almost inaudible, or it might be an audible distortion or an artifact. And these will be areas in the mix where I need to look at that and decide whether there's an issue or not. To adjust your threshold for the true peak, whether you're on your own preset or a different one, just right-click this box, and this alerts box comes up, and you can change the value. So if I pull it down and say, oh, alert me whenever it's -3, you can see there's loads of alerts here. Or I can make it, only alert me when it's at 0.8, and then it's not going to give me any warnings at all. This true peak is extremely sensitive, so if it goes over by even a fraction, it's going to give you an alert. I think I have to stress again just how accurate this tool is. It's absolutely painstakingly accurate, so you can completely rely on it and trust it. I want to go back to the dynamic range, which I was talking about a moment ago. because right now I've only got information about the loudness. But if I head to the dynamic range graph, now you don't have the dynamic range graph on the free version, but you do still have it displayed there. What this lets me know is the difference between my integrated loudness and my true peak loudness at any particular point in time. So it doesn't really matter how loud your track is. You could take the whole volume up or take the volume down. This is just letting me know the difference between the peak and the average, which means that it lets you know how compressed your audio is. Reading this graph, higher values, less compressed, more dynamic. When the values get smaller here, your track is more compressed and less dynamic. So this track here actually during the verses is very dynamic, and during the choruses it starts to get a little bit less dynamic. But after analyzing thousands and thousands of commercial releases, typically a good value to be around is about 8 or so, maybe a little bit lower. If you go much lower to like 5 or 4, that's when things start sounding extremely overcompressed. And if you're particularly dynamic, sometimes a song can feel like it's missing that glue, or it just doesn't feel quite so held together. But for different genres, it's going to vary. So this is where you can drag in lots of reference files and actually find out, okay, if I'm mixing EDM, it's pretty much very compressed throughout the whole song, and you can try to go for that sort of commercial sound if you want to. And having tools like this can also be a good double check for your ears, because I don't know if you've been mixing or mastering all day, sometimes it's difficult to hear those subtle differences in compression once your ears are a bit fried. And sometimes you can drag it back into something like this and say, okay, yeah, no, this is fine. Or, oh no, I'm absolutely toasting this. This is way too overcompressed. I need to go take a break and come back to this another time. I'm going to go through a few more options and menus. So down at the bottom right, we can change from mono to stereo to surround sound. So you can configure it for your system and what sort of mastering job you're doing. At the bottom here, I mentioned the presets. It's good to keep it on 1 to 8 if you don't have the pro version, but the presets on here, which will be regularly updated, let you know what kind of ballpark you might want to be in if you want like a very loud Spotify master, or if you're uploading to YouTube or to Apple Music or something like that. And you can also make your own custom presets. Maybe if I'm mastering an entire album and I want to do it all to sort of a similar standard, that's something I might dive into there. Another handy feature of the pro version is this export here. So if I select that, what I can do is export all the data into one graph. So I can rename this, I'll just say Songmaster, and then I can choose a resolution. Say I want it to be a 4K resolution, a PNG, there's all sorts of different options here. And then I'm just going to export that in the light theme. So let's take a look at this on my desktop. So if I look at my master overall, it gives me the loudness, the dynamic range, and although this looks really cool, it does actually have a functional use. I use this with every single song that I master for a client. I will print one of these out to show them what's actually going on with their audio and prove that there's no true peaks above a certain level, that it will transcode properly, that there shouldn't be any issues, and that it's suitable for online streaming. Even if they don't understand all of these values, I find it's a really good way to give a client peace of mind and also give myself peace of mind. And it just feels like I'm giving them that little bit extra with my mastering service, because most people don't give you like a 4K graph of what your song actually looks like, as opposed to just the WAV file. And then back in the plugin again, this settings up here, there's all sorts of stuff here. I'll try to quickly go through it. So you've got your alerts. So these will change for each preset. So you can change where the alerts are for the true peak, where your alerts are for the integrated loudness. You can change absolutely anything, to be honest. These are maximum alerts and minimum values. If I go to the left, I can change the colors on the dynamics graph, which I'll dive into in a little bit more detail in a moment. And I can change my loudness split. So right now for Spotify, it's saying -14 LUFS integrated, but I can change this. So maybe I want it to be -23. What I can do as well is change this transition to make it a little bit softer. So you can see that you can transition it from a hard line to a little bit softer like this. And moving down, you can change the loudness target, which is this little yellow value here. So right now I'm saying my loudness target is -14. And then based on that loudness target, I can change the relative scale of my graph. And I know some of this might be a bit too much detail for some people, but this is handy. So to save me doing loads of maths and constantly, calculating between -8 and -14, -6 and -14, you can just change the relative scale. And then -14 becomes 0. And I can just look and go, oh, I'm 6 over, I'm 3 under. easy. And there's also a few advanced optimization features, but I won't go into these too much. Something that's hidden in this menu that's actually kind of funny, if you click this Youlean a lot, all of a sudden you have a fun little arcade game that you can play hidden away as a little Easter egg. I'm typically very useless at these kind of games, so it won't be too difficult to beat my current high score. Yeah, we go, I'm useless at it, but it's hidden away there. Something fun to play if you're completely sick of mastering. Right, back to the serious stuff. Let's take a closer look at that dynamic range graph. So right now I have the dynamic range target turned on, which is this dotted line. I can turn that off there. So if I don't want to have a specific target to aim for. And I can change the colors if I go here, dynamics. So you can change the scale so that, you know, if your graph's just here, you can make more use of the whole graph here. And you can change your thresholds. So right now I had it set at 8, but maybe I want my threshold to be 12, and then it's going to show that I'm getting a little bit more compression. Right now these color thresholds are set to auto, letting me know that, you know, red would be bad, green would be good, that sort of thing. But I can change the values of my threshold and remove them. So maybe I only want blue and orange, or maybe I only want green and red and I don't want any other colors. So you can sort of customize this just to give you the information you actually need to see. So although there's a lot of simple information that can be displayed by this plugin, you can really dive deep and customize it so that it's perfect for your exact needs. What Youlean realized with this plugin is that, you know, everybody's needs are different. Some people are just going to need to select a preset, you know, I want to upload to YouTube, but other people have really specific mastering requirements that they need to stick to. So now what I'm going to do is use it in conjunction with a limiter just to see how I might use this while mastering. So what I'm going to do is just press play and I'm going to select a preset. So I'm going to select the Spotify preset. So I want to upload to Spotify, and what I can see right away, the true peaks are peaking over. So I'm going to set true peaks on my limiter. And I'm going to pull the ceiling down until I'm not getting any of those true peaks anymore. Okay, then I'm going to pull the threshold down and start compressing this. So if I now switch over to the dynamic range graph, I can see that right now, you know, I'm probably at a good level. Those choruses could be more dynamic. I also wouldn't recommend mastering just in headphones, but I hope this makes sense for now. If I press pause, what I'm going to do now is actually export this whole song. So now that I've mastered my whole song and exported it, I'm just going to drag the file back in to analyze it. And what I can see is overall I have an integrated value of -9, which is, you know, pushing it. That's decently loud, I would say. And if I check my dynamic range overall, I can see that, you know, maybe I could have a little bit more dynamic range, but that feels okay. And let's just take a look for any true peaks. It doesn't look like the true peak ever went over where it should be. But now I can really dive into these figures and see what's right for that genre of music and see whether I'm stacking up against all the other commercial releases. And that's why I really like this plugin, because there's many things that you can't do with your ears. And for everything your ears can't do, this has got you covered. So I hope this video has been helpful. I hope you've learned a lot about this plugin. Definitely download the free version, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.